Hello everyone, welcome back to another 2028 election prediction video. This time we have Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, versus Vice President J.D. Vance. I think Beshear would be a good candidate to run. He may be perceived as a bit more boring, but I do think him winning in Kentucky, which was pretty impressive, I think that would definitely help him. I think he has like a bit more of a reputation as being a governor than some senator. I do think he's a decent speaker as well, so I don't think he's all that boring. But I really think he'd struggle to win the Democratic primary, and I really doubt him being the eventual Democratic candidate in 2020. I do think he's going to run. I just don't think he's going to make it that far in the electorate because he's just going to be seen as a very moderate type of governor here. But at the same time, I think he fits with most of the Democratic electorate policy-wise. I mean, he isn't really different from most Democrats, even though he serves in Kentucky. He mainly just won based on the unpopularity of the previous Republican administration in Kentucky's governor race. And he managed to hold on to that because he just didn't do anything too crazy as a Democrat. He actually had very high approval ratings. So I think he'd be a good candidate to win back a lot of rural voters in these swing states, and we're just going to get right into it. Starting off, I think Florida's safer, I'd say. I don't think it really matters how good of a Democratic candidate you have here. I think they're always going to lose Florida by a safe red margin. It's just became a Republican safe state now. Into Ohio and Iowa, I think Andy Beshear would do well in the rural parts of these states, enough to bring these states below a safe red margin. I also think you'd do decent in Texas too, so I think you'd bring down the margin in Texas, and I also think you'd bring down the margin in Alaska, all making them likely red states, but they're still going Republican anyway, so it doesn't really matter. In Nebraska second, I think you'd do a bit better than Harris here. In these traditional likely blue states, Virginia, New Jersey, New Mexico, I think you would all win them by likely blue margins, pretty similar to how they're typically won. Maine and New Hampshire, I think Maine would stay about the same. Nothing really difference here. New Hampshire, I think you'd do a bit better here. I think you'd be able to win it by a likely blue margin. So turns that swing state into a more safer state for the Democrats. In Arizona and Nevada, I think you'd do well in Arizona, but not well enough to win the state. I think it still would go red. Nevada as well. I think he would do good with independent voters, and that may be enough for him to really win here. So, again, it really depends on the popularity of the Trump administration here. But I think it's possible he could win the state of Nevada. I think he would do well with independent voters like he did in the governor's race in Kentucky. So I think he'd be able to win back Nevada for the Democrats by a narrow margin. In the Rust Belt in Minnesota, I think he would do well in the rural areas. So I think he'd be able to win back Minnesota there by a pretty big margin, higher than a lean blue margin. But in Wisconsin and Michigan, I think he'd also be able to win back these states. I think he would win back Wisconsin. It's a pretty rural state. I think he'd do better across the board in Wisconsin. Same with Michigan, too. I think he'd do better in these two states. I think he'd probably be more inclined to pick Whitmer as a VP choice, just to help him out in Michigan, solidify that state, because it went about as Republicans Pennsylvania did, so you want to solidify that on the Democrat side again. It's worth by a good amount of electoral votes, too. Pennsylvania, though, I think him doing better in the rurals in most of these states, I think that would be just enough to flip Pennsylvania back to the Democrats. So he'd be a bit ahead of J.D. Vance already winning the Electoral College. In Georgia, I also think he would manage to win this state back for the Democrats, too. I think he would get good turnout in Atlanta. I think he doesn't really anger any parts of the Democratic base, which is a good thing. So I think he'd be able to win in Georgia. But about North Carolina, I don't know. It typically goes red in these predictions, and it's usually a narrowly red state. Plus, would Andy Beshear be able to get like record-breaking black turnout in this state? I don't know. I think it still would go towards Vance here. So I think Beshear wins 292 to 246. against J.D. Vance. I think Beshear would be a good candidate for the rurals of these states. I think he would help the Democrats out, lessen the margin they have to get in the urban, suburban areas. But yeah, I think Beshear would be a decent candidate for the Democrats to run. Other than that, thanks so much for watching this video. If you're new to this channel, you should totally subscribe if you enjoy content like this. And just thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.